Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being, he says, with no irony. I watched her yesterday and realized how bad she is for the Republican Party. She has no personality or anything good having to do with politics or our country. She's a talking point for Democrats, whether that means the border, the gas lines, inflation, or destroying our economy. Now, Elise Stefanik, who is also a GOP lawmaker, has raised her hand and she's like, I'd like to take that leadership role that we've just ousted Liz Cheney from. Elise Stefanik has actually voted with Trump less than Liz Cheney has. So I just find it fascinating that while Trump lists all of these talking points about Liz Cheney that are not true at all, Elise Stefanik, the person who he's very supportive of to fill this leadership role, has actually gone against Trump policy-wise through her votes. And he doesn't care because he just wants someone who's going to loudly accept and loudly regurgitate what he has to say about the 2020 election. Now, the second part of his statement I think is fascinating because it goes to what I was saying earlier. He said, quote, "She's a warmonger whose family stupidly pushed us into the never-ending Middle East disaster, draining our wealth and depleting our great military, the worst decision in our country's history. I look forward to soon watching her as a paid contributor on CNN or MSNBC. MSDNC, which is a talking point that's typically regurgitated by the Jimmy Dores of the world. Now, I want to make a point about how that statement is ridiculous when you take a look at Donald Trump's record on foreign policy. Donald Trump's record on foreign policy was garbage. He vetoed bipartisan efforts, a bipartisan resolution to get the United States out of Yemen. He vetoed that. Donald Trump ripped up the Iran nuclear deal, and obviously that increased tensions with Iran. We didn't need to be there. Iran is now doing exactly what the nuclear deal prevented them from doing, which is enriching uranium. He also implemented sanctions against the Iranian people, which has led to incredible pain and suffering among its civilians during the coronavirus pandemic. He's been a complete and utter disaster. Tried to cover up for Mohammed bin Salman after he ordered the murder and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post journalist and US resident. So let's get that caveat out of the way because I acknowledge that Donald Trump's foreign policy was trash. But with that said, his comments about Liz Cheney ring true. She absolutely was in favor of the preemptive war in Iraq. She has created think tanks with the likes of Bill Kristol in order to manufacture consent for forever wars abroad. And you have to keep in mind that it's not just Democratic voters in this country who sent their children to fight those wars. It was also Republican voters who sent their children to fight those wars. And when those children came back, they were abandoned. They weren't given the health care they needed. They weren't given the mental health care they needed after suffering from PTSD and other mental health issues after dealing with multiple deployments to the Middle East. So as much as I can't stand Donald Trump, and while I completely acknowledge that he's a complete and utter liar, Liz Cheney has created this bed for herself and now she has to lay in it. Those kinds of statements ring true. And I think that it does have an impact on Republican voters and who they choose to support moving forward. I just wish that the same voters were a little more aware of how Donald Trump was a continuation of the same foreign policy that we experienced during the Bush era, during the Obama era, and now also during the Biden era. Doesn't matter what the administration is, our foreign policy in the last several decades has not changed. But when Liz Cheney tries to tell the truth, she needs to understand that she's already destroyed her credibility. And she's got to take responsibility for that as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.